Florida is an interesting state to say the least in the southern United States, known for its tropical climate, the beaches, the Keys, the Everglades, its questionable culture and citizens, and of course the theme parks. After my recent trip to Florida, I've now visited almost every major park in the state, and with that I've ridden a good chunk of the coasters in the state too. Really the only major parks I'm missing are Universal Studios, and I guess maybe Legoland. I've also not visited Hollywood Studios or Animal Kingdom since 2015, so in result you won't see rides like Slinky Dog Dash, Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, and Revenge of the Mummy on the list. Also keep in mind this is an opinionated list, so you'll probably not agree with some of the things I say, especially since there are some hot takes on this list. Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with me. Starting at number 25 is Rock 'n' Roller Coaster, a Vekoma LSM launch coaster at Disney's Hollywood Studios. This was my first looping roller coaster, and as a kid, this was also my favorite roller coaster, so it certainly holds some sentimental value. However, when I rode it again when I was older, I found that the ride was a little lackluster. I enjoy Aerosmith's music, so I love the theme, the effects are cool, and the ride's launch is decent too, and the inversions are also fairly forceful. However, the rest of the ride is sort of just filler, and if it wasn't for the effects and scenery, this would just not be that great of a ride. Last time I rode this, it also was a tad shaky, nothing crazy, but it was still noticeable. It'd be cool to see if Disney could do a nice refurbishment to this, or replace it with a better indoor coaster. Number 24, Hurricane at Fun Spot Kissimmee, an E&F Miler High Miler coaster. This is also another nostalgia coaster for me, as it's a mirrored clone of a coaster I grew up on, Starjet at Casino Pier on the Jersey Shore. However, nostalgia isn't the only reason Hurricane is on this list. This ride also has a good amount of strong airtime, has some really cool laterals, and some enjoyable jank. It's definitely not the smoothest ride, but I guess nostalgia really does put it higher than it should be. Number 23, Journey to Atlantis at SeaWorld Orlando, a Mack Rides water coaster. I unfortunately only have one ride on this, but I thought it was super fun. The theming is pretty good, and the main drop is good too. However, this one doesn't get you too wet. I personally don't mind this, as I'm not the biggest fan of getting soaked on a ride, but if you've ever ridden this, you know that one small drop before the second lift can get you absolutely drenched. The coaster portion is short, but the drop is speedy, and you get a small pop of airtime before the splashdown. It's definitely a great water ride. Number 22, Expedition Everest at Disney's Animal Kingdom, a Vekoma custom mine train. Now, I haven't ridden this since 2015, so I don't have the most updated opinion upon it, but from what I remember, the ride has some intense moments, especially the indoor helix. The theming is also incredible, which is really what elevates the experience. However, I unfortunately remember this ride having a strong rattle in the second half. However, I adored this ride as a kid, and maybe with another re-ride, I'll like it more. Number 21, Space Mountain Alpha Side at Magic Kingdom, a WED Aero Development Indoor Coaster. This was the first version of Space Mountain, and it features two tracks, Alpha and Omega. In my opinion, Alpha is the weaker of the two sides, and many others agree with my opinion. This seems to just run slower and track not as well, however, it's still a super fun ride, and I love it. Number 20, White Lightning at Fun Spot Orlando. White Lightning is a small but solid GCI with tons of floater airtime and a good amount of laterals in some of the turns. The ride is still pretty smooth after being over 10 years old. While it may not be the best wooden coaster, it's definitely worth the head over to the small park, especially if you're in the area. The Fun Spot parks are always open late, and it's super easy to get on these after a day at Universal, SeaWorld, or pretty much any of the Orlando parks. Number 19, Cheetah Hunt at Busch Gardens Tampa, an Intamin multi-launch coaster. Cheetah Hunt is almost like a scenic trip around the safari area of Busch Gardens Tampa. The ride isn't the most forceful, however it still has a few punchy launches and a few moments of airtime. There's also a pretty good roll, but I'm not the biggest fan of it thanks to the hard over-the-shoulder restraints. Many people would probably rank this higher, but I'm just never really been the biggest fan of this ride. Number 18, Space Mountain Omega at Magic Kingdom. I wanted to save my full thoughts on Space Mountain for this side specifically. It's pretty much the same ride as Space Mountain Alpha, however it's mirrored, and I feel as if this side runs smoother, has some better airtime, laterals, and positive forces. I'm really not sure what it is, but this side has always just been better. It's a super fun high-speed ride through the dark, even though it's really not that fast, and of course, you feel like you're going to get your head chopped off or your hands chopped off because the supports look way closer than they actually are, especially when you're in the dark. I love the janky vibe of this ride, with its low-to-the-ground seating, its little bit of roughness, and I really hope Disney really never changes it, except for maybe some, general improvements. But also I love the off-ride music instead of the on-ride music because it's just like so funny. It's just like doesn't feel like a Disney coaster at all, and I really love it. Number 17, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad at Magic Kingdom, a Vekoma mine train. This is such an incredible mine train. Not only does it have amazing theming, but the ride is fairly intense, especially for a Disney coaster. Big Thunder Mountain also features these wide trains with no seat dividers, so if you're sitting alone, you're going to go sliding around due to the strong laterals. The restraints are also super minimalistic, and they are shared by the whole row, so the airtime is even more pronounced, and the ride sure has it too. There are not only some floater airtime moments, but there are also full-blown ejector hills on this thing. If you can, see if you can ride in the back row. You will not regret it. Number 16, Tigress at Busch Gardens Tampa, a premier ride Skyrocket 2. And surprisingly, this is my favorite of the Skyrocket 2s I've ridden. This one seems more intense than the others I've ridden, and even though it has the comfort collars, these weren't that bad on this one. This is definitely a coaster I'd like to ride whenever I visit Busch Gardens Tampa, and it's not just another clone in my opinion. Number 15, Tron Light Cycle Power Run at Magic Kingdom, a Vekoma motorbike coaster. This ride was way better than I was expecting it to be. The launch is super intense, and most of the turns are forceful or feature some sort of laterals. If you sit up front, you can even get some mild airtime entering some of the brake runs. However, unfortunately, this ride's pacing does suffer from all of the block breaks, but I feel like the theming and the storyline sort of go with it, so in the end, it works out. Number 14, Secret at Busch Gardens Tampa, a B&M dive coaster. This was the second B&M dive I've ridden after riding Valraven at Cedar Point. I liked Valraven a lot until I rode SheiKra. This isn't just a gimmick like most of the people think B&M dives are. SheiKra is a genuinely great coaster. The two large drops give tons of floater airtime, and most of the valleys and turns are fairly forceful. The one inversion gives great hang time, and on the left side of the train, you get a nice pop of airtime on the twist out. Overall, a super solid coaster. Number 13, Kumba at Busch Gardens Tampa, a B&M sit-down coaster. To some people, this might be low. Unfortunately, my last rides on it were a little rough. However, Kumba is a super forceful and whippy looping coaster, and for its age, it still runs really well. However, there are better coasters than it, which is pretty much why it's just so low on this list. Number 12, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at Epcot, a Vekoma spinning coaster. I know a bunch of you are probably punching your screen right now because, for whatever reason, this coaster is highly praised by everybody I know. Now, I only have one ride on this, and I rode it in the front row, and everyone tells me to ride in the back car. However, this ride is super long, and the theme is extremely fun. My only issue with it is that it's just mega forceless. Once again, everyone tells me that the back car is like a completely different coaster, but honestly, I have a hard time believing it. Number 11, Manta at SeaWorld Orlando, a B&M flying coaster. Now we are getting into the incredible coasters. I love Manta so much. It is a super forceful flying coaster with high off-the-ground inversions and low-to-the-ground scenic turns. I really hate that my home park has a Superman Ultimate Flight clone, which is an incredibly mid coaster. Now, granted, I haven't ridden any other B&M flyers besides Manta and Superman, but this ride gives me hope for the other ones. Starting the top 10 is Kraken at SeaWorld Orlando, a B&M floatless coaster. I originally did not like Kraken at all upon my first ride. I thought it was way too rough for a B&M, and the layout really just didn't impress me all too much. However, my last rides on it proved me wrong. While it wasn't perfectly smooth, it actually rode fairly well. This time I was able to focus on the forces, and all the inversions are super whippy and super forceful. The 0G roll and Cobra roll are super snappy, and the addition of a loop in the second half instead of the typical 2 corkscrews is a nice addition. This ended up going from my second lowest ranked fullest to my favorite. Number 9, Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando, a Premier Rides launch coaster. This ride absolutely surprised me. The airtime on this ride is absolutely crazy, and I have no idea how this was supposed to be a family coaster. Unfortunately, I hate Premier Rides trains with a burning passion, and they're not super comfortable and extremely hard to get in and out of. I really do not know what they were thinking when they made them. If this ride had some normal trains, it would probably actually be way higher, but at the moment, this is my favorite Premier Rides coaster anyways. Number 8, Pipeline the Surf Coaster at SeaWorld Orlando, a B&M surf coaster. This is another coaster I didn't really get the hype for. However, it's still a great ride. While Icebreaker may be more forceful, Pipeline is more dynamic and obviously more unique with the special stand-up trains that have moving seats. The feeling of your feet lifting off the train going through airtime moments is a sensation a lot of people thought they would never feel. I really hope to see more of these surf coasters, especially if B&M can make them higher capacity. They're very comfortable, and Pipeline is a really nice prototype showing off what the model can hopefully do in the future. Number 7, the Incredible Hulk at Islands of Adventure, a B&M sit-down coaster. This ride is incredible, as the name suggests. It is everything a B&M looper should be, intense, whippy, and dynamic. Hulk takes the foot off the gas in the second half, but it's still super fun, and the first half easily carries the ride. Also, not to mention, the launch is super forceful and way more powerful than I was expecting. I really wish B&M would make more looping coasters like this, or pretty much all of the looping coasters like this, because it is simply amazing. Number 6, Mantu at Busch Gardens Tampa, a B&M invert. Florida's only invert is possibly the best one in the whole world. Just like Hulk, this is intense, whippy, and dynamic, but it takes it up like 8 notches. It also features one of my favorite inversions of all time, which is the Batwing. In the back row, you get absolutely whipped down, and it's so unbelievably forceful. And in the front row, it's even more forceful, but you really don't get that whip. Number 5, Mindblower at Fun Spot Kissimmee, a Gravity Group wooden coaster. Now, some of you are probably scratching your heads on why this is so high. I'm a huge fan of this coaster, even though it's considered rough by most. The airtime, laterals, and amazing hang time on the lone inversion make up for a ride that is typically rough according to most. However, I don't think it's even rough to begin with. Mindblower also has incredible pacing and really doesn't let up until it hits the final turn. Easily one of the best wooden coasters out there in my opinion. And I've always thought this too. My first rides on it a few years ago I thought were incredible. Yeah, it was a little rough, but it was still bearable. However, with the new RMC track, it's even better, and they also did some general track work on the wooden portions too. The transitions between the RMC track and the wooden track is a little janky, but they're done on airtime moments, so it honestly just adds to the airtime, which I think is super cool. Number 4, Mako at SeaWorld Orlando, a B&M hypercoaster. Mako is easily my favorite B&M hypercoaster. It has tons of super strong airtime on every hill, it's buttery smooth, and features a unique layout towards the end with high banking turns that just give a little bit of airtime. This is one of the most re-rideable and enjoyable coasters out there, and is the best coaster at SeaWorld by a long shot. Number 3, Haggards Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Islands of Adventure, an intimate LSM launch coaster. Ooh, that was a lot. This ride absolutely blew me away, and I was lucky enough to get both a front and back row ride on this. Haggards has some of the best theming out there, and it's to the point where you don't even feel like you're at Universal anymore. A lot of the turns have some decent whip to them. They also feature some airtime pops occasionally, which is just the icing on top for this. All the launches are punchy, and a few of the ride's surprises are super fun. It's really hard to beat, but there are 2 coasters that I think are a little better. Number 2, Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa, an RMC hybrid coaster. Easily one of the best coasters ever made, and RMC's most intense creation. Even when this ride is running at a snail's pace due to wind and cold temperatures, it's still an overall top 10 coaster. Every hill gets strong ejector airtime, all the inversions are whippy and give fun hang time, and of course the wave turn, which is one of my favorite elements in the entire world and is the best airtime moment in the world in my opinion. This was my favorite coaster in Florida until I rode number 1, the Losta coaster at Islands of Adventure, an intimate LSM launch coaster. This is my ideal perfect coaster. Punchy launches, incredible hang time and airtime, one of the best drops in the world, a super fun theme with an amazing set, and super fast pacing. It took me a little bit to decide which coaster was better, but the Losta coaster came out on top. Also not to mention, it has some of the comfiest trains and restraints of any coaster, allowing you to feel the ride's intense airtime and laterals with its open, wide seating. If you have watched my videos in the past, you know Iron Gwazi was my number 1 overall coaster, which means VelociCoaster took over that spot. Thanks for watching everyone. Let me know what your favorite Floridian coasters are, and if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more theme park content just like this. Once again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.